We are live.
Happy Monday, everybody. We will start in a second here. If you are live with us, say hi. Let us know where you're watching us from. Of course, we always love to do shout outs at the very beginning. So if you're live, say hello. Let us know. We will answer back. I know I'm a little blurry right now, so just kick the kids off the Wi-Fi. So hopefully it starts clearing up in a second here. But if I'm blurry, it's not intentional. I live out in the countryside and my service kind of sucks. So just give it a minute. I promise, hopefully, it'll come back and I will be a lot more clear. But if you're on, say hello. Let us know where you're watching us from. Callie and I are going to just share this into our personal feed so we can get more people on. And if you would so kindly share this as well, we have such an awesome person on the show with us tonight. Definitely like breaking barriers for us and leading the way. And so we would love it if more people can join in on the conversation. So if you're alive, please help share. Hi, Eric. How are you? Thank you for tuning in. So again, just give us a couple minutes. We're going to share this and then we will come on live. Eric says, try the 5G hotspot. Okay, I'm going to do that, but it might take me offline. But let me share this and then I will try that, Eric. Thank you. Okay, let's see if this works. Callie, I'm going to try Eric's suggestion here.
I know, but you're not blurry anymore.
Oh, I'm not?
Oh,
okay,
wait.
see, then I don't.
But it's a little bit, yeah, maybe try it just to see.
It may just be my lighting too. That better? I feel like it's not like blurry, but it's not the clearest either.
Yeah.
It's kind of like pixelated, y'all.
Yeah, it is.
Tienen noño countryside, yeah. Seriously. Okay, Eric, I'm gonna try your suggestion here. But feel free to say hello, you guys. Let us know where you're watching us from. Callie and I will definitely do a shout out. But while we're doing that, I'm gonna try to switch my Wi-Fi to my phone and see if it works. Let's see. Good thing I have like unlimited data. Otherwise, it would not work.
Yeah. Girl.
Let's see. Oh, damn, check with this is a golly tail. My goodness. Good Lord. What's wrong with Olivia's quality? I know.
Uh-oh. I think she's getting switch over. She's trying to connect to 5G since she is a little bit blurry. Oh, she's back. Okay. Are you now on 5G? Because it kind of took you off.
It says 5G. Am I clear?
Okay.
Am I not clear?
It's delayed. It's delayed, but it's not clear right now.
Okay.
Let's see if it'll shake itself out.
Eric, go plant your work, Eric.
Let's see. As long as it's like not delayed.
I feel like I'm frozen. And it's a lot more blurry before.
Yeah, I feel like the old is better. Hi, Gaunty from Minnesota. Let's see. I'm just going to do a last share. Oh, this is better. Did you go back?
Yep,
Okay.
I did.
Yeah, I think it's better than the other one.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, Eric, thank you for your suggestion. I tried, it didn't work. We're just gonna hope that this kind of clears out usually. From the past, it usually does. So Gamsiva, thank you so much for watching and tuning in. We really appreciate you for sticking through with us. Okay, Eric says it's more blurry for sure. Yes, it is.
But it's not delayed. The other way was like delayed.
Yeah. I don't think it helps that in my house, my phone data is not as fast. So that's probably not a good idea. Maybe it works for you, Eric, on your end because you live out in the country or in the city where there's lots of people around you. So, all right, cool. So, are you ready, Kelly?
Mhm.
It's not me this
I
time.
am ready.
I mean, it's not Kelly this time, it's me. So just to
Oh.
give you guys quick updates, we are kind of taking a summer break, so you're not seeing as many shows as you normally would once a week. We are trying to at least keep ourselves motivated and doing one a month. And we have an awesome show for you guys tonight. We are literally like handpicking specific ones that we want to do for our one episode per month for the summer. And we'll kind of pick back up probably towards like mid-September to October, and then take a small break for the holiday, and we'll be back in full force in January. So our schedule is going to be a little bit kind of crazy. So just, tough it out with us. We'd appreciate that. We are also attending the Millionaires Conference in like T-3 weeks. So we are so excited to be kind of covering social media coverage for Chai and his Hmong Millionaire Conference. And so we're super excited about that. We're going to be in Sunshine, Florida. And so expect lots of content from Callie and I and from attendees. We're going to just do some really fun things. And so we hope that you guys share our stuff. Engage with us while we're there. We may go live. I don't know, we haven't really decided yet, but I'm sure we'll come up with something really fun to engage with you guys as well. So there's that to look forward to. And then I don't think there's anything else. Callie, did I miss something?
No, I think there are still tickets for the Millionaires Conference in Tampa. Again, that is at the end of this month. What was that?
I think there's 7 when I saw Chai's post. There were 7 tickets left. I think he opened up some more seating. So
gotcha. And we do have an episode about the conference and what, who's coming on and what he's going to cover. And so I think the lineup is really, really great. We know it's August, but if you are wanting to, kind of start or work on your New Year's resolution from January that you've forgotten or time has just passed by, I think it's a great time to go and readjust and get remotivated. Lots of great folks that he's going to have come on from, real estate all the way to assisted living facility and everything in between with, is it Thule Baku?
Yes, he's going to talk about stocks and investing and crypto and all those types of things.
Yeah, his Facebook name is different, so I always forget which superstar he is. But he does more than just sing, and so I thought that was really cool. But there will be a lot of great folks to hear from and to learn from, and I think it's going to be a very intimate experience so that you really get to ask those questions and create, the roadmap to, hopefully becoming a millionaire.
Yeah. And there's also a lot of really good people attending too. I think there's we know some people on that list, right? And I think it's just a really great place to network with like-minded people. And so they always say like you are who you surround yourself with. And so I think mindset's really important. So just make sure that if you guys could afford to go and want to go, there are 7 tickets left. Reach out to Chai and he'd be more than happy to kind of talk to you about what that may look like. So
and we are not getting paid to say this, but I would like
you hear this, right?
What was that?
If you're hearing this, pay up. Just kidding.
yeah. You can't afford to not go, I guess.
Yeah.
Again, we're not getting paid to say this, but I think anytime that you have an opportunity to learn, you're investing in yourself and you are pretty much your best investment. And so consider this as an opportunity for you just to, like try and pick someone's brain who has done it and can show you the way.
Yeah. Yeah, and Chai's pretty awesome to you guys. If you don't know him yet, he has lots of groups on social media. You can follow him. He's always giving tips and tricks and stuff like that too with what he's learning. So I think it's just awesome he's putting something like this on. But nonetheless, Callie and I will be there, and we hope that those of you who will be there, we will see you. Thank you, Mai. We will see you there. But yes, look out for lots of content regarding that in the next couple of weeks.
Yes, and Mai is also attending and is probably somebody that you probably want to get to know as well. I've been seeing her out on TikTok. She's rocking the TikTok and just really working it. And so I see your hustle.
Mm-hmm.
It's at 360p. How does is he just saying that, or how does he know it's at 360p?
No idea, Long. I've got no idea. But my son is not on Xbox Live. I literally just kicked him off. He's swimming right now in the back. But you're probably right. I mean, if you're talking about 360p XD, I have no idea what that is, but probably.
Oh.
All right. I think we are ready to bring on our guests and get this show on the road. Yeah.
Yep. So we have with us today, I'm going to mess it up. We have with us today, Panhia Yang. She is in the oh my goodness, I'm just losing it. She's in television news. I would get fired if I was on like a real live TV right now. They would just be like, okay, just go home. But she has been in the television news industry for nearly 20 years and is currently an executive producer at Fox 9 in Minneapolis. And we will definitely go into what an executive producer is as well. I was talking to her before this and I was like, what exactly does that mean? That's a big title. So driven by her passion to share knowledge, Panhia is also an adjunct professor at her alma mater, St. Cloud State University, where she teaches news producing, writing, ethics to future journalists. Panhia serves as the secretary of the NATAS Upper Midwest Emmys. When she isn't spending time with loved ones, she can be found trying new things. This year, she learned to eat fire and went backpacking at Isle Royale National Park. Oh my goodness. I don't know any of these words. I'm like trying to completely butchering this. And so we are going to let the star of the show come on and show me what's up.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody.
Hello. Welcome. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you guys so much for having me on. It's quite an honor.
Oh, honestly, I feel like it's an honor to have you on this show. I think we have so much to learn from you, and so we're just both really excited that you've made some time to kind of come on our platform to share with us, your experience and knowledge. And so, thank you so much for making time for us.
Of course, it's a pleasure. So.
All right. So Kelly tried to do an introduction of you. I think she did an okay job. She would not be. I would have not fired her. But could you tell us a little more about yourself and your background, just to kind of kick us off?
So I guess just real quick, I guess let's start with like me being Hmong, and my family, because since family is absolutely huge. I'm the oldest of 10 kids, born in Thailand. Came to the United States with my parents when I was a year and a half. All my siblings are born here, and pretty much all of us are still here in Minnesota. My parents live in Oklahoma. I have a sister out in Pennsylvania, but for the majority of us, we live here in Minneapolis, Minnesota area. I am an executive producer at Fox 9 here in Minneapolis, and it's great. I love it. Before then, I was a producer for a very long time. And it's just, it's one of those things where you like, I don't know if you guys, when you were younger, you were like totally like, you loved like current events, like that assignment class where you cut, well, I guess it'd be like back in my day, I guess it was like you cut an article out of the newspaper, you read it, and then you present it to your class. Mm-hmm. So I loved doing that. Love doing that. And then that translated into like being on the newspaper and yearbook in high school. And then when I graduated, I was just like, okay, what do I do? And so I was like, I've done print, which is what we call like newspapers, magazines, that kind of stuff is print. And I was like, let's try broadcasting. And I actually, funny story, I learned about news producers because like I feel like the term news producers, it's a thankless job because you're not in front of the camera. You are behind the camera. I like to tell people that I'm kind of like the brains behind the beauty. And I'll explain that a little bit more later, but it was just like, and so I read an article in Glamour magazine where they were like profiling like women, and like they profiled a news producer, and I was just like, whoa, this sounds really interesting. Thankfully, like St. Cloud State has a great TV journalism program up there. And so it's, an hour away from the Twin Cities, went up there, and yeah, it's been, I guess, wonderful ever since. So
That's awesome. We had like in high school, there was because I think it was like Channel One News or something. And then after that was like the broadcast, like the like actual students from our, like from our school would do a little bit of news, but I was always like so scared. Like public speaking was like really scary when I was growing up. And so I remember that was like really cool to see like the kids who wanted to be in front of the camera. So let's go back a little bit and talk about what you did go to school for, and how did you oh my goodness, guys, I'm losing it. And how did you get to where you are today? I'm so sorry. So, I think I'm just getting stage fright because you're here, and so it's like it's so much pressure.
Oh no, don't worry about it, please. Like I am no pressure. So I went to school for I graduated with a Bachelor of Science in mass communications, TV journalism, and a minor in creative writing. And so that in itself, like, so St. Cloud State University, again, love the school. That's why, whenever they need me to teach, I go up there and I teach, because it's just like, I love this thing about like sharing knowledge with like, future generations. Cause it's just like, it's one of those things where I absolutely believe wholeheartedly, like, in order to lift everybody up, you need to share knowledge. And so, so I absolutely just like completely believe in that. And so like, I love teaching. I love like being in the classroom, telling these students about like, okay, this is how you produce a newscast. And they're looking at you like you have like 3 heads. And then they finally go into lab, come out, and they like, you see the light bulbs go off, and like that just like, you can't describe that in words. Like, it's just incredible. And so that's what I love about teaching. But sorry, back to your question. So that's what I went to school for. Thankfully, up at St. Cloud State, they have this great studio where like we got to do everything. I remember walking into my advisor's office the first time I met him. I was like, I want to be a news producer. And he was like, okay. And so he was able to craft a curriculum for me that like specifically focused on that. And so you focus on like news writing, storytelling, that kind of stuff. And so it was wonderful. It was great. And I produced as many newscasts as I wanted because everyone else wanted to be on TV. And my parents too, they asked me too, they're like, why don't you want to be a reporter? And honestly, I don't trust my mouth. Because like, sometimes I misspeak, instead of like millions, billions, that kind of stuff. And so I'm just like, I don't trust my mouth. I trust my fingers. And so that's why like I never got in front of the camera. But my parents, it's just like, I don't think they understood it at first. And now they're like, oh yeah, totally cool. And so it's just been like, I don't know, it's just been absolutely wonderful. And being at St. Cloud State, I was able to walk out, like graduate from there pretty much without an internship, land a job. Because it's just like, it's such a great program. I was able to take what we call like a resume tape, like what we do is like we put together a compilation of our stories and that kind of stuff, our newscasts that we put together, and we send it out to prospective employers. And so what they do is they look and they can kind of see, what, our work that we put together and that kind of stuff. And so I also got like a great recommendation from my professor too. He's honestly one of my mentors that I absolutely treasure. And he was the one who actually tapped me to fill in for him to teach when he was on sabbatical. So he absolutely is just a great guy. And just having that and just having the opportunity, it was, it was great. and I feel just absolutely so blessed. So
Yeah. I wanted to share too, when we first originally started this show, this podcast, we were going to do it in a studio, and I could just remember the like feeling so overwhelmed when I walked into the room with all of the buttons that controls the camera and putting people's names on the screen. It's so much. I was like, Callie, we cannot do this. We needed to get someone else in. And so, but it was a really good experience. We got to learn a little bit about what producers do see, and just like the amazing things that they could do behind the screen that no one sees. I think as a reporter, you're there reading the teleprompter and trying to convey a story, but there's someone else behind you that's like making it look so awesome. And I think it's just so crazy to see. Sadly, it didn't work out in the studio because COVID hit, and we're here now live on Facebook. But I think just that experience alone, it showed a completely different side to me. And I appreciate it so much more because now literally how it's ran. And I think it was just an awesome thing to experience. For myself, at least. I can't speak for Callie, but I think it was good for me. It's awesome. I love it.
It is. And honestly, like as a producer, because like, at the core of my job, I'm a writer. I'm a storyteller. And so, but you lump on a bunch of all these other responsibilities too. So as a producer, I'm pretty much I'm responsible for like the content of a newscast.
Yeah.
So the stories that go in there, the scripts for all those news stories is what a producer writes. You determine like the content, how things are presented, whether it's video, whether it's sound, you're going to include sound, graphics. There's typically on the bottom of the screen, there's like, what we call a lower third with names, that kind of stuff. I put all those in. And so it's just like, that's kind of, what a producer does. And it's just like, you're responsible for like putting together a compelling, informative newscast that's also engaging too. And I think one of the big challenges too these days is that like TV viewership is down. And so because, everyone, you can get, news on your phone, no problem kind of a thing. And so you have to be able to write newscasts to make them compelling and engaging so people actually tune in because, they want to know what's new, what's happening now, what's going to be happening. They want to be prepared. And so I think that's one of the big challenges that we are currently facing right now. So.
Is it my turn?
I'm sorry. I thought you were going to say something.
Well, I do have a question regarding that. So I feel like nowadays people are so used to like very short, like people have very short attention span. Have you guys like diverge a little bit to try to create like very tiny bite-sized pieces of news, or how has that kind of influenced how you put news out?
I think there's like one of those things too, where like you're watching a newscast. What we try to do is we try to vary the stories. So it's not just like you see the anchor and then you see video, and then you see the anchor and then you see video. What we try to do is like we do the anchor and then like maybe like a sound bite and then video. We stagger that with what we call packages, which is like all encompassing stories that reporters put together. And so that way, like you have like, it's not one consistent thing, but it's like have like a newscast that kind of goes up and down, not just with like the energy, but also with like the pacing is what we call it. And so, obviously with like TV news, it's headlines. You're trying to boil these stories down into a like 25 seconds, script. And so you can't go into a whole lot of details. You can send people to our websites to get more information. But typically that's what news is. It's like, it's quick. And also one of the things too, and I try to teach my students this too, is that, unlike when you're reading something, you really have to pay attention to how you write. It has to be short, concise, one thought, one sentence kind of a thing, because people are listening. And so like they don't have the opportunity to go back, to rewind, read it over, listen to it over kind of thing, like how you would in a news article, that kind of stuff. And so that's one of the things where it's just like, again, I feel like for me, like I believe words are just so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And just the different words that you use, the connotations, like honestly, my sisters hate it. But I'm like, I think you mean to use this word instead of what you said. And they're like, and so and so it annoys them because it's just like I deal with words all the time.
Yeah.
And I understand that, like, here in Minneapolis, we had the George Floyd, the unrest after the murder of George Floyd.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of conversations in the newsroom about like, what exactly do we call everything? Is it riots? Is it unrest? Are they demonstrators? Are they protesters? The words of like, the word demonstration has a different connotation than protest or riot. And so it's one of those things where you have to pay attention to those nuances and the definitions, because then it there's a little bit of like bias depending upon like what words you use. And so as journalists, you try to be as unbiased as possible. So
yeah. Well, and I think the words that you choose, it makes a really big impact too, right? So I think that's why you do have to be very careful with what you choose.
yeah, absolutely.
All right. So you shared a little bit ago that you were a producer before becoming an executive producer. So can you talk with us and share with us a little bit about what exactly does an executive producer do? Like what's a day in the life of your job?
Okay, so well, I can tell you what I did today. So, but typically, what an executive producer does is they're more so newsroom management. So I'm overseeing several newscasts and the producers who produce them. I'm going through scripts, making sure that they're factually correct. I'm going through supers, making sure that they are factually correct and also spelled correctly. And so I'm really like just kind of overseeing, but then also having an active role in, again, the content that we cover, the stories that we cover, the where we send people, I think is another big thing too. And really just helping to determine like, okay, what is the big story of the day? Obviously here in Minnesota, the big story of the day is this past weekend, there was a deadly stabbing, in Apple, of some tubers, like on the Apple River, which is about a half hour east of the Twin Cities. And so it's just one of those things where it's, today the suspect was in court. And so it's just like, it's a way of just like furthering that story too, because it happened on Saturday. This is the new thing is, the guy was in court and he was like officially charged. And so just really kind of like paying attention to that kind of stuff. And, what exactly is newsworthy, and also just making sure too that like, that, that video gets, attached to the correct story, that kind of stuff. And so it's more so like overseeing as opposed to like really delving into a newscast as a producer does. And then also with like news management, it comes a lot too with like really like, mentoring is a big thing. Today I sent out an email about what we, those lower thirds on the bottom, we call them supers, and just making sure that, we're diligent about making sure they're spelled correctly, making sure that they're following specific format. And also just making sure that like, just to remind like, okay, this is our style of how we do certain supers and that kind of stuff. And so just really paying attention to that. And then our big push too now is that is hiring. It's unfortunately there's people who get burned out in the industry because it's a tough job. It's a tough industry, when you're exposed to so much violence, death, that kind of stuff. That plus like, the hours, they are not very family friendly. Thankfully my schedule has changed where I'm like working, I think today it was like 10 to 6:30. But it's just like, because news doesn't stop, you have people who work overnights. I have colleagues who come in, producers who come in at like 10, 11 o'clock at night to work on the morning show. The 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock producers, they start at 1:30 and they work till like 10:30. And so it's just like, it's not very family friendly. And so people get burned out really easily. And then also currently, and I see this too, as a teacher, is like people are not going into the TV business. And so right now there's like a shortage of workers like everywhere else. And so as part of my job too is to then help recruit and to help look for candidates and that kind of stuff too. And so really helping like finding producers and like bringing them into the into the newsroom. And then at Fox 9, we have this initiative called Voices for Change, where we use our platform to help elevate diverse voices. And so just like, making connections through that, and like finding ways to like do outreach in the community and to tell stories, tell the stories of like BIPOC people. And so there's a lot, but yeah.
And we'll definitely get into the, that's one of the questions down the road. But question on like, so when there is a big situation like what happened with George Floyd, does all the news do you go in, it's like, okay, we got to like shift and now we got to like cover something else? Are you taking over from whoever, is getting off their shift, or how does that changes the news when there's like a big situation that, all the attention, especially George Floyd? Because I felt like the world then like kind of just like stopped and after COVID, and it was like everyone's looking at like Minnesota.
Yeah, it was wild, because when he first died, the news release that came out was just like, a medical emergency or something. And then it started to come to light that there was an officer who had his knee on George Floyd's neck and he died, and that kind of stuff. And then as soon as that, hit, then came the unrest. And it all happened during COVID, like during lockdown. Pretty much everyone in the newsroom was working from home at that point. There were just a few people in the station. Everyone was working from home. And so like never in my wildest dreams, because I remember like years ago, when I think it was swine flu that was big, we were getting ready to work from home. And I was like, how is this even possible, kind of a thing. And then COVID showed us this is possible to put together newscasts from home. And so like I was in my spare bedroom. What is it like? We had a producer, what we call in the booth, in the control room. So they're the ones who were talking to the crews out there. They were the ones who were like communicating with like the helicopter, communicating with like their anchors, that kind of stuff. But I was at home, just like, listening in. And then like if there's like, say if there's something that came down that was relevant, I was making like lower thirds that they could put in, just so like it, made things like fresh and that kind of stuff. And it was just like, those nights of unrest, like we were what we call wall-to-wall coverage, where, it wasn't just like, 5, 6, and 7 and we're off, and then we're back on at 9 and 10. Like we would go from like 5 o'clock until like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, just having our anchors on there. And our reporters were out there in the field. They had like their photographers with them. We actually had like our crews that we sent security with them. Like we made sure they had like, there were 3 people where it was like photographer, reporter, and security person who could watch out. Like I had my reporters who were out in the field, like, they weren't immune to what demonstrators were going through. You know what I mean? Like we had pictures, like they would send us back pictures of like their vehicle being hit by like rubber bullets, which by the way, I don't really think are rubber, because they kind of look like metal cans. And like another reporter live on TV, like she got like, they, police like deployed like gas, and like they felt the effects of it. And so it's just like, it was just absolutely like wild. And it was one of those things too, where it's just like, it's in these moments where like, your colleagues, like everybody just like knows what's expected of them, and they just step up and they just do it. And it's just kind of like, it's incredible to see how well like everybody worked as a team, because everyone just knew exactly what was expected of them. And so it was just like, it was one of those things where like, when we did sign off at like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, there were there was communication with like the morning show team to be like, hey, okay, this is what's going on. This is what we covered. This is how we can prepare you for the next day. And so it was just one of those things where it was a complete team effort. And that's what happens with like in the event of breaking news. Like today, it's the 15th anniversary of the 35W bridge collapse, which happened to be, 13 people died. And it happened to be like I had just moved back to Minnesota. And it was like my 4th or 5th day on the job. I was working at Care 11 at the time. And it was just, again, it was wild. But it was also just incredible to see like all my colleagues come together and put together this product. Like everyone knew exactly what they were doing. We had crews out in the field. They had live shot capabilities. So they were going live from out there. For some weird reason, like cell phones weren't working at the time, just because like I think it was just like, I don't know if like something was jamming or there was just so many calls going, like the volume of calls was just ridiculously high. And so like calls weren't working, but like we still, put together a newscast, and like we still like had things like we covered the news, we covered the story. So yeah.
So have you ever like made a, because I think it would be kind of crazy to like see that people are saying exactly what I'm writing, or like, like you said, putting supers up or something. Have you ever made like a mistake and was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe like, have you ever done anything like that?
Oh my gosh, they're like, honestly, there have been like, I've made so many mistakes. And it's just like, it's, thankfully many of them have happened like years ago where I can look back and laugh. And it's one of those things where like you make the mistakes, you get lectured by your boss, and then you learn and you move on and you just pray that doesn't happen again. I remember when I was in Lincoln, which was my first job in Lincoln, Nebraska. I think the governor was expected to make like this big announcement. We're supposed to take it live, that kind of stuff. I had a photographer out in the field, and I was like, hey, I'm going to be monitoring the feed, but I need you to tell me too, when he starts, like, give me a signal or something to know that he's going to start walking in. So then I can cue, my anchors who are on the set. And I thought he sent me a signal. Turns out it wasn't. And so for 15 minutes, my anchors, what we call tap dance, like they ad-libbed for 15 minutes until they're like, we can't do it anymore. And so they're like, we're going to come back. And yeah, I got a lecture about that. And it's just like, it's one of those things where I've learned that like, it's okay to be a little bit late. And just, it's one of those things where I've had the privilege of working with people who are so experienced that, like they can flawlessly ad-lib into tossing to these live shots and that kind of stuff. Another mistake that I've made is like we build together in the system, in these like newsroom systems, what we call a rundown, which is pretty much a rundown of the newscast. And so the system that we were using at the time, like to print scripts, you select all your scripts and then you drag them to an icon, the print icon. Well, it happened to be at the time right next to the trash can icon. And so I dragged it into the trash can. Yep, that was and that just happened like maybe like 15 minutes before the newscast. And it was just like, oh my gosh. And so it's one of those things where like you freak out a little bit and then you're like, I got to put this show back together kind of a thing. And you only do that once. And so, but like, it's one of those things where it's like, there's a lot of mistakes, but then also you learn from them and you move on. And it's just like, you also learn not to be too terribly hard on yourself. So yeah.
That's true. Seems very high pressured.
It is. It absolutely is. Like it's not an easy job. You get to see the worst of people. You get to hear about the worst of people. Reading criminal complaints. It's tough. Reading a criminal complaint about the Apple River stabbing, the details are disturbing. I read criminal complaints about like child abuse, like that is just horrendous. And so it's one of those things where it's just like, I think I'm starting to now be able to balance like work and like just leave work at work when I'm at home, just because like it's one of those things where it's just like, if you let that kind of churn and you like it eats at you, like, and it's heartbreaking. And so it's just like, you have to be able to be like, okay, we're just going to take a step back. We're just going to decompress. So.
Yeah. So as an executive producer, do you get to choose what stories people are going to cover?
Yeah, I do have a say in what we cover. And also another thing too is like, and it's not just as an executive producer, but as a member of the newsroom, you have the opportunity to pitch stories too. To just to be like, hey, there's this and this is going on, I think we should cover it, kind of a thing. And so I think it's there's a lot of great possibilities out there. I've pitched stories like, and it's one of those things too where it's just like, I think being Hmong, you try to make sure that your community is covered. And so like, I think earlier this year I pitched the story because like Tori Envy had written a book that I was just like, I just thought it was absolutely great because it's, it's written in Hmong. I think it was about like, I'm a big sister kind of a thing. And it's just like, and just making sure that um, to be sharing and teaching another generation of Hmong children, Hmong people to read and to hold on to our language and, not just, spoken, but written as well. Because my Hmong and my Hmong is atrocious. I can't read Hmong, and so it's just one of those things where like just for her to be able to do that and to take the opportunity to try to preserve this language, because honestly the Hmong language is beautiful. And so I was like, I think that's a great story, and so I pitched it and one of my reporters did it and it was just absolutely great. And so just really like making sure that we tell the stories of like our community. And I think it's one of those things too where it's so important to have like diverse people in the newsroom, just because like everyone has different experiences. I grew up like it's I mean like a lot of Hmong people, I grew up in the projects. And my parents worked all the time and I took care of my brothers and sisters and that kind of stuff, and that experience is completely different from like a lot of my colleagues who who may not have struggled as much as my family did, or had a different experience. And so I think it's a great thing to have that voice to advocate for certain stories. In one of the stations I was working at, one of my colleagues, she was an older white woman, and she was just like, "Hey, we should do a story about like the annual release of like this sweet wine." And I'm like, I was honestly offended, because I'm just like, what is a family in North Minneapolis going to care about this wine? Like, they're probably worried about trying to put food on the table, or if their house is going to get shot up, and you want to do a story about wine? Like, really? And it's just one of those things where it's just like, just offering those different perspectives, I think is valuable. So
yeah.
That's so true. And like especially being in, like Minneapolis too, right? Where there is a really big Hmong community, and like that narrative can easily get swayed by people's like, just interactions with Hmong people. And so I think that's really great.
Yeah, and honestly, in Minnesota, we're so lucky. I mean, we did have Gia Vang here. She was a Care 11. She just recently went to, I think it was San Francisco. But like Chinu, her down in Iowa, he is like completely visible here too. And he's such a champion for like the Hmong community and for just Hmong sisters in general. And then of course, like we have Laura Lee down in Rochester, and she's also like, she's an anchor. She's been down there like forever, and she's just like, she's so recognizable in the community too. And so it's just like, just to have these people, like I feel like in Minnesota we're so lucky to do that. I had the opportunity to work at Care 11 when I was at Care 11 to work with a Hmong reporter named Bua Zhang, and she's just she's amazing. She's an incredible woman. And so just having that opportunity, and of course like it's not just TV too. Here in the Twin Cities we have a lot of, I think Nancy Yang, I think she's at like NPR. We have like Hmong writers at like the Star Tribune. Like it's just incredible to see like just how many Hmong journalists there are here in the Twin Cities. So it's absolutely great.
Yeah, I love that we're starting to and it very well could be that there were people in those roles before, but we just didn't know, and I love that we have a platform where Callie and I, we do really love having different people come on and just kind of sharing their experiences, because I feel like our younger generation, if they don't know, they don't have anybody to look up to or reach out to if they have questions, if it's a field that they're interested in. And so I love that we have so many people that are in positions where we didn't maybe know we had before. And I think that's amazing. We've come along.
And honestly, like representation is so important in these things. Because like growing up, I loved Connie Chung. Like she was like my girl, because I was just like, she is Asian and she's a woman and she is a journalist and she's on TV. And so I think she was the one who planted that seed in my head. It was like, hey, this is a possibility. And so just like being inspired by her. And then like years ago when I was in college, I went to like HND and I listened to like Dr. Hu Yang talk about like Hmong pioneers. And I was just like, that's fascinating. And so just feel like being inspired by that too. And it's just like, I don't know, just like just like carving your own path and like being a trailblazer. I think it's so important, because it's just like, it's easy to stick with like stuff that like you're comfortable with and that kind of stuff. But when you deviate from the path and you know set your own course, I think it's one of those things where it's, I don't know, it's beneficial to not just yourself, but I feel like your community as well.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to have, people at different, part of the food chain. I think we were talking about that before the show, and just like the different aspect, and not just in front of the camera, but knowing that there are all areas of news that is impactful and makes a lot of decisions that we don't even realize. Like like I sure didn't know that the executive producer was like writing the script for people and really putting pretty much the show together, right? And so I think that that's really important for people to know. And then if anybody wants to go into news media, just knowing that you don't have to be in front of the camera too. Like if you're not comfortable in front of the, there's other opportunities that you can be part of the voice and part of news and not have to be in front of the camera.
Yeah, it absolutely is, because it's one of those things where it's just like I love news, I love being in the know. But it's just like, but again, I don't trust my mouth, and so and so it's one of those things where like being a producer gave me the opportunity to still embrace my love for news, but to take a different role in it. And so I think it was just like I don't know, it's an opportunity that's given me just a lot of wonderful experiences.
Yeah.
What is your favorite and least favorite part of your job?
Well, probably least favorite, let's start with that, is probably the hours. I mean, news is 24/7. I work holidays, I've worked weekends, I've worked overnights, and so it's just like it's tough. I mean, I worked with colleagues who left the business because they become parents, or they want to be home for dinner, and typically in our business that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And so I would say that's probably the toughest thing. The best thing, the thing that I absolutely love about my job, is that every day is different. Every single day, like the bones of the structure are usually typically the same.
Yes.
Like every day is different. There's new different stories, that kind of stuff. And then like I would say very close up there too is just like just being able to learn like new things. You're constantly learning new things. Like I love space. And so like this James Webb telescope, like I love these pictures that we're getting back from space of like all these galaxies and universes that are like we're never going to see in person, but like to be able to see images of it is fascinating.
Yeah.
Like it's just being able to learn and have that kind of knowledge and that kind of stuff too is, I think, just one of the best things about my job, because honestly, like it helps when I'm playing trivia. So
True.
Love it.
yeah.
So what are some challenges that you faced as an executive producer? Can you share some of that with us?
I would say the biggest challenge right now is just again just hiring people. I think that's the toughest thing. It's just hiring people, because it's just like every other industry, there's a worker shortage. And so that means like for us, is there's a lot more, you're working, your hours aren't consistent. They can fluctuate. You're asked to do more and to help cover, which is totally fine. But it's just like, it's also easy to get burned out. And so just kind of really paying attention to that kind of stuff. But honestly, it's, that's a big challenge, is like, as an executive producer. Now going further and, going to like a big challenge being in the industry is, at least for me personally, is that, it's, I think I wouldn't per se say there's, let me see how I can best phrase that. I think being, what mom and dad calls, at the duho, you face racism, you face, setbacks, like it's tough. One of the examples I like to say is that like when I was at one of the stations I was working at, there were 5 Asian women in the newsroom, which is great. It's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
The downside was that everybody called us by the wrong name. And so it's just one of those things where it's just like, and one of the women is like Indian. So it's like we didn't have the same skin complexion, but yet to others, to our colleagues, we all look the same. And so dealing with that, also too, it's just like, I mean, I think dealing with different personalities in the newsroom and just the way that people work, I mean, I'm not the loudest person in the newsroom. And I think it's one of those things where like, I don't know if that gets mistaken for being, for just not caring or being, complacent. So it's just like, I'm thinking like, it took me nearly 20 years becoming an executive producer. I mean, I've been in this business for nearly 20 years, and I'm finally in a management position. And it's just like I look at other stations, at other people in the business, and they've gotten to this level, them being white, probably male. They've been in this position younger. Like they've gotten this position younger. And so it's just one of those things where it's just like, there's a part of you that does not want to believe that, okay, is it racism? But then there's another part that's just like, where was that opportunity for me?
Yeah.
Why did it take so long?
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like, I don't know, it's one of those things too, where like, I feel like now being in this position, I have the ability, the power to make those changes and to help make those decisions and to offer a different perspective, and to be like, hey, let's rethink this. Let's, is there a different way of approaching this? And just like, maybe again, just offering a different perspective that, might not be considered. So.
Yeah.
And I mean, back to self-care, just like now that you're in that position, we want you to stay there, like as a Hmong community, we want you to stay there and have that longevity there, because like you said, you're paving the way, and hopefully, people are able to progress faster than before. And I think that diverse voice and having, different people in the food chain of, making sure also, right, that there's incoming people that is going to keep that diverse voice going is so important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kelly, yeah. I was going to say, and we've got like only 8 minutes left, so I want to make sure that we can, delve into the last couple of questions. So yes, if we can.
Okay, so we did, we have been talking about the diverse voices in media, and outside of even news, right? We have like just movies that we're having all these superstars come on. I feel like, especially with the anti-hate stuff that happened during COVID, I definitely feel like there has been so many people who had spoken up, like big stars, and then other high-name supporting the Asian community as well, and taking up space in news and media. Do you feel responsibility for ensuring that there are diverse voices in the media?
I wouldn't say I feel complete responsibility, but I think I feel like I'm playing a small role in this, because there's like the Hmong community, the Asian community in the U.S. is so big, and it's just like there's so many different voices, and there's so many different people who are using platforms to really promote, like Asian AAPI community and that kind of stuff. I mean, I feel like too and I'm hoping it's not a fad. I'm hoping it's not a trend, where like we have like like Shen Yun, is that it, or whoever the
you talking about the show,
the Marvel comic.
Shang-Chi.
Yes, that guy. Sorry. Like just to have that.
I think that's the dance or the
yeah, Shang-Chi. Yeah. And to have that, and to have like to have that, like to be able to make it in the mainstream, like Crazy Rich Asians, like having that in the mainstream. And I think also too, BTS. Like you think about that, and it's just like, I mean, to see their popularity like spread into the US. Like, and so I think it's like there's so many like just different like factors, different like players who are really elevating like Asian voices right now. And then of course, like unfortunately too, it's a big, I feel like a big part that spurred that on was again during the pandemic when there was all those attacks on Asian people. And so, and just having voices step up and be like, hey, that's not okay. And I think that really helped too. Unfortunately, it's like unfortunate incidents that's really elevating and putting like Asian communities in the spotlight. And so I think that also played a big role too. And so I think that's like, I think it's a lot of different factors. Also in like in the news business, I think it was earlier this year, it was like on New Year's, there was, I don't know if you guys heard about it, but like there was an anchor, I think in like St. Louis, who like some lady left a voicemail that was like, hey, she was talking about like, their New Year's Eve traditions and how they do like dumplings and that kind of stuff. And this woman called in and complained because she's like, she went on this like racist rant. And pretty much complained that it was very Asian. And so instead of turning that into a negative thing, this news anchor, Michelle Lee, I believe her name is, she turned it into something positive. And so she started a foundation called Very Asian. And so it was just like, and again, it's just to like elevate voices. And so then I think she teamed up with Gia Vang and they started this foundation. And it's incredible just to, hear like, just to get the backing behind that movement too. So I think like there's so many different factors that's really playing into making, the Asian community so prominent right now, which is absolutely great.
Yeah. I remember reading that. I think I was scrolling through Facebook and I remember I was reading it and I reached out to Gia because they were selling the shirts and she was like, "Girl, it is sold out." And I'm like, "Oh my goodness, that's crazy."
Yeah.
So I couldn't get my Very Asian shirt, but I thought that was great that they did turn something so negative and detrimental to the Asian community and turned it into something super positive and
educational, which is great.
It's a very good educational thing to look at and for us. And so I just thought that was so awesome and I wanted to support it. And Gia's like, nope, our shirts are sold out. I was like, oh.
Check the website again because I like got my sweatshirt. So
yeah. She's like, check it often. We replenish it, but it's completely sold out. And I think that was a few months ago when I reached out to her. So that's awesome. Yeah. Okay. So I think this, it's a good segue. I feel like there are a couple things here, but what are things that you would change in the media right now?
Oh, I think it's been, I would say, I think just building trust in the news media again. It's one of those things where the previous administration really kind of, I feel like, did a number on the trust that people have in journalists. And so I think just like building our reputation up again, I think is the big thing. Because, you think about it, and I mean, a prime example is like police officers right now, with like, police shootings and that kind of stuff. And it's just like, and the backlash that they get, like a lot of them are leaving the business. They're quitting their jobs, that kind of stuff. Like, why do you want to be in a job where like you're disrespected? And so I think like, I think as journalists, like the big challenge right now is just to really build up our reputation and really and still be able to tell like compelling stories and to really do our job, which is, to give voice to the voiceless and to hold the powerful accountable. And so, and I think we just have to just keep on doing our job and still, retain that and hopefully build that trust from our viewers in TV news. I think it's one of those things too, where it's like another big challenge too that we face is that there are a lot of entities out there that are now calling themselves like news agencies and that kind of stuff, and they don't necessarily go through the schooling for like ethics and that kind of stuff, and just effective news, news writing and just going through like journalism school. And so I think it's one of those things where like we're competing a lot with that. And then also just trying to like really embrace, I think the news industry is trying to really embrace just technology and how like things are changing so quickly. One of the things is that like streaming is huge right now. And so like, we're not just putting content on TV, on social media, that kind of stuff. Like we're streaming stuff on YouTube. And so just like looking at like all of these different like platforms and constantly thinking like, how can we put eyes on our product, on our content, that kind of stuff. And then of course, like, just, I don't know. And it's one of those things where like just covering the news with like, as many, to try to cover the news as much as possible. And I think is another struggle because again, with the worker shortage, there just isn't a lot of people that are going into this business. And so like making sure that we still do our job and we still do it effectively, and still build that trust and that kind of stuff too, I think is, that's a big challenge. Yeah. And so it's, I don't know. I mean, I feel like, and I've had conversations with like, students about this too in the past, but it's like, I think there'll always be a place for journalism and for journalists. Yeah. What kind of capacity that is, I don't know. But, there's still going to be powerful people that we need to keep tabs on, that we need to keep them in check. There's going to be underserved communities that will need, a way to get their voices heard. And so I think like there's a job for, journalists will be around for a long time.
Yeah. I've noticed too that I've seen a lot more like news anchors are becoming also influencers. Like I have seen a lot of them on like TikTok or Instagram, just really showing like behind the scenes work or just really building trust, getting people to be a little, bit more relatable, showing a little bit more humanity of who they are. So it resonates with people. So people will tune in, which I think it's a great strategy, but it's also a lot of extra work that you have to do. And I don't know if that's something that they're getting paid to do or if they're doing it on their own time. But I just thought that was also very interesting. I follow a few down in California, and I think that they're so funny to kind of like just show behind the scenes stuff and really like building rapport with people. So that's a great strategy.
That's one of the great things about like social media. It's just I think a lot of people have embraced it and just like to give people like, a behind the scenes look at like, this is what happens on the other side of the camera, that kind of stuff. And also just like to invite people into their homes. And I think this is what I noticed the most too during the pandemic when people were actually like doing live shots and that kind of stuff from their house. Yeah. And it's just like, just like I have my cat behind me right now. Like you get to see like you don't like they're out of a studio and so they're in their homes, so you get to see like the personality that's there, like their decor choices, that kind of stuff. And so like I feel like the pandemic like really let people into their homes and like just to I think because one of the things too like that one of my news directors has always taught me is like when viewers turn on the news, they're inviting you into their home. And so these newscasts should be like a conversation with them. And so it's just, it's the pandemic kind of flipped that around and we invited the viewers into our homes to be able to see like, to do live shots from there, to anchor from there and that kind of stuff too. And so I think it's one of those things where it's just like, I think it just like humanized us a lot more and just like, it's like, hey, we're humans, at least, on air people, like they're humans too, and just to, just, I think it's just like, how it really helped just humanize and just personalize too, I think. And it's been, I don't know, I think it's fascinating just to see like the evolution of it all.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think it's been great to see just the connection between people through social media. Like the reach is insane, I think, too, right? So especially when all that George Floyd stuff was happening. I mean, that was everywhere. It was so easily accessible. You've got news anchor reporting it with their phone, like on TikTok talking about it, right? Like they're reporting and then they're also at the end of it giving like their opinion of what happened and things like that. So I just thought that was really unique and such a great strategy for the media to use as well. So
Yeah, and I think the big thing about the pandemic too, when we all had to work from home, was like I think like viewers were a lot more forgiving. In that like they're like, okay, they're trying to like put on news, they're shooting on their iPhones. It's probably not the clearest picture, but I think they understood. You know, I mean, like Zoom interviews, like the quality, like there's really never like a picture perfect Zoom quality, but it's just like I think like viewers were wonderful enough to understand that okay, we're in a pandemic. We're all kind of learning as we go, and so it was just absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
Just to have that like understanding from viewers.
Yeah. A little bit more grace.
All right, so I have one last question that we did not give you. I just thought about it now, but when we think about the news, we often think about news that is put out. But I'm sure that you're in situations where you get the news first, or maybe news that y'all can't put out. Like, how do you deal with that? Do you just go home and write in your journal? Like, are you like, when there's like stuff that you're advised not to maybe talk about? Do you get into situations like that, or is it going to be news eventually, anyways?
I think so. One of the things about like you think of like when you think of news, kind of think of it as like a filter, because there's like a lot of stuff that comes down, and so it goes through different levels of filters before like something it makes it into a newscast, because everybody has a different way of news judgment. They have different news judgment, and different ways to determine what exactly is newsworthy. And so you go through a bunch of different filters, and like it's sometimes too where it's just like, for me personally, sometimes like in my newscast, if like we had a shooting from overnight and it's 9:00 at night, I'm writing for the 9:00 newscast, I don't really care if it's a shooting. Like that doesn't really impact my viewers. And so you really do think about like the impact and that kind of stuff. There have been stories that are too tough to put on. I would say like, again, child abuse cases, like sometimes those are just like too tough to put on. And it's just like, what is the benefit of sharing the story? Unless you take it further and like, like find a way to create change with that story, and to take it further, whether it's talking with specialists and that kind of stuff. And really build up that story. But, just like a case of like a mother or father being charged with, child abuse, I don't know, it's tough. Probably not. I'd say there isn't a whole lot of stories, because like our reporters are constantly working different kinds of stories. And so it's just like in a situation where, say, there is a story that like we can't air for whatever reason, typically that doesn't necessarily get relayed, and quite often until like that story's set and ready to go. So oftentimes it's not so much a situation, but I don't know. Again, it's just one of those things where it's just like there's a lot of sad stories out there, a lot of tough stories. A big example is this Apple River situation. Again, I keep on going back to that because it just happened. I was over at my sister's place, and so our younger sister, earlier in the day, she went tubing at Apple River. And so for what is it, like I saw on my phone, because I get my work emails on my phone, the email came in, it's like 5 or 6 people stabbed at Apple River, and one of them is dead. And that was like the only information I got. And I was like, isn't Chelsea at Apple River right now tubing? And so then that freaked my sisters out. And so for like an hour and a half, we're just trying to get a hold of her. Eventually we did. She's fine. She and her friends are fine. They were pulled off the river, and taken back to their cars and that kind of stuff. But it was just like, it's one of those things where I'm relaying this information to my siblings as like it's coming into my email, and so it's just, I don't know, sometimes it's tough. Like, my parents, they lived out in the Tulsa area in Oklahoma. And last month there was a mass shooting at a hospital there. And I'm like, chances are my parents are nowhere near this hospital, but I'm just going to call and check just to make sure. Called them. They're like, yeah, we're fine. Or I was like, whoa, yeah. And I was like, yeah. And so, but I made checks, just make sure they're fine. Then I texted my siblings and that kind of stuff. And it's just like, it's one of those things too, where it's just like, it's frightening, being so close to these situations, to see things play out, like this. But I don't know, it's one of those things where you have to be able to, detach, to like leave work at work. And I think it's one of those, I'm pretty sure like doctors and nurses too can like relate. Um, but like just being able to like detach and to be able to be like, okay, I'm going to step away. I need to decompress. I need to, as you mentioned, self-care, and just being able to do that. I think it's one of those things where, and it's not to be heartless or anything. It's just to be able to recognize like, okay, you're experiencing something, and you need to just, just take a step back. A prime example of this for me personally was back in 2016. Again, another police shooting, this time Philando Castile. And I watched the Facebook Live, from his girlfriend. If you guys aren't familiar, it was this black man pulled over for, I think, like a minor traffic violation. I think his something, I can't remember what it was. It was so minor. And he did everything right. He told the officer that came up to him, was like, hey, he had his hands up. He was like, I have a gun on me, and informed the officer, that kind of stuff. And still he got shot and he died. And I looked at that and I was like, what am I seeing? Like, I could not comprehend what I just saw, how this is possible, like how this kind of stuff happens. And so like I got out of news for 14 months because I was just like, I don't know, like, I feel like journalists, we all have some like level of like PTSD from all the stories that we've covered. And that for me was like my, oh my gosh moment. Like I was just like, how do I process this? And for me, processing it meant stepping away from the industry for, a year, just to kind of like, just to get my head back in the game, just try to like, I don't know, maybe explore different opportunities and that kind of stuff. And then, I don't know, for me at least, when the news bug bites, it bites hard. So I went back into the industry, and it's just like, I think I went back too with like, better tools to cope with these kind of stories. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that would be hard. So we really appreciate that you're still hanging in there. And I think, again, just going back to diversity, right? And like speaking up about things, and sometimes even going against what, maybe your team members, might want. And the importance of just continue to staying there. So we are 12 minutes over, so we apologize for taking all your time. How can people best connect with you?
Well, I'm on Twitter, at Panhia_Yang. You can reach me through Facebook, and then you can also, if you want to, you can email me. My email address is Panhia.yang2, the number 2, at fox.com. And so that's another way to get a hold of me too. And honestly, it's one of those things where like, if anyone's interested in like learning more about the news industry, how to get into news industry, that kind of stuff, like, honestly, I feel like, again, this industry has given me so many different opportunities. Like I've had the opportunity to meet like Dan Rather, former like CBS News anchor. I've been in like the ear of like Brian Williams. I've talked with like Carson Daly. I've met like Seth Meyers. Yeah, like all this, like I've had so many great opportunities. And so it's like one of those things where, and I've talked with my sister about this too, where it's just like, she's a nurse. 2 of my sisters are nurses, but she's a nurse. And I'm just like, talking about just like how rewarding the impact that your job has on other people. I told him, like, you save people's lives. And she's like, but Panhia, your job is very important too, in that like you're making sure people are informed and they stay informed and that kind of stuff. And so it's like, yeah, I guess you're right. But yeah, and so it's just like, I don't know. I mean, I think it's an incredibly rewarding industry, and I feel like it's one of those things too where like, I don't know, if you have a passion for news, like absolutely go for it. And just I feel like just in general too, like if you have a passion for something, like don't stop because like no other home person has done it. Like that should give you inspiration to actually do it. Yeah, you look at like Suni Lee, and it's like
So proud.
she's a gymnast. Like, oh my god,
Mhm.
you know? And so it's just like it's just fascinating to see that and to be able to be like how inspiring she is to like just a generation of younger kids and also older people too. I mean, you know, and I know my parents are tickled pink just to be able to watch a young person on the Olympics, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So true. And there's some comments about representation. And yes, representation really does matter and it's really important. Even, as you're talking, I'm thinking about, how does news get translated, and I mean, that's a whole other can of worms. But, I think again, having somebody at the table who makes decisions and can, even for a few minutes, think like, how does this get back to my Hmong people? It's stuff that are relevant and are important. And so thank you so much for being here with us today and to tell us more about what you do and just teach us all something. And hopefully, if you are watching and you're interested in a career in news media, reach out to Panhia. Here, all that talk, we believe that conversations drive change and change starts with you. And with that, we'll see you next time. Good night.
Thank you guys.
Bye.
Bye.